Mr. Nessie. So many binders up here already. 4 binders stacked. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Justin Stuckert. I'm an 11-year Army veteran, an entrepreneur, a mentor, a veteran advocate, a philanthropist, and soon the one title that my parents have always wanted me to have, a college graduate. So about 5 days ago, Carlos reached out to me and he asked, Justin, would you like to be a speaker at our medal ceremony? My schedule was completely cramped. I was actually out of town at the time. But I figured, I had plenty of time to prepare. It wasn't until next week. I said, sure. I knew Carlos would do the same for me. So then he immediately followed that up with, well, Justin, I need your remarks tomorrow. If you could just send that in to me, that would be awesome. So lucky for him, in school I was very adept at the hurry up and wait skill set. And so I was able to write something up, and now here we are. He also mentioned something about 5 minutes or something. I didn't fully understand it, but we're going to do what we can. So my story is probably not all that different from a lot of the veterans here in the room. I joined the Army right out of high school. I knew that I needed to go to college, and I didn't have the mom and dad scholarship fund that a lot of my friends did. So I went and talked to the recruiters. I joined the Army right out of high school, and I remember the day that I was at MEPS to sign my contract. I very specifically remember the date. It was September 10th, 2001. Of course, I went home, I called everybody that I knew, and I told all of them all the exciting news. Now the next day, of course, many of us will remember for the rest of our lives, that was September 11th, 2001. I very specifically remember that evening as well when everybody called me back from the night before and asked me what had I gotten myself into. I tried to explain to them that I didn't know that was going to happen the next day, but that it only had strengthened my commitment. That contract was for 4 years. Army infantry, I was stationed in Europe, and it was awesome. I got to play with all the cool stuff, all your stereotypical when you think about the Army stuff. I got to shoot all the weapons, I drove a Bradley, and I got to travel all over Europe. Now Europe is extra special when you're an 18-year-old right out of high school. The drinking age is something like 4 or 5, something like that in Germany. So the whole social environment was different, and it was really exciting for me. From there, I deployed to Iraq. It was May of 2003, OF1. We drove from Kuwait up into Baghdad. We established what later became the Green Zone, and we did our job there for 15 months. I learned a lot about myself during that time, and I did a lot of maturing. After my 4-year contract had ended, I did what all young soldiers do. I got out of the military. At that time, I was 22 years old, and I had just got back from leading a squad of infantrymen in a combat zone. So I knew that I was a real asset, and I didn't need any of those transition assistance classes that they provided to me. So I just kept clicking next slide, until it was all over, because I knew that companies would be fighting over me when I got back home. It turns out I had a slight miscalculation on the whole transition process that time when I got out. So for about 2 years, I worked mediocre jobs that were enough to pay the bills. I never once went to the VA. I never got involved in any veteran organizations, and honestly, most of the time I didn't even mention that I was a veteran. I had a fear for some of the stigmas and narratives that a lot of us still face today. One day the Army called me up and they offered me a job as a recruiter right there in my hometown. Said I wouldn't have to move or anything. So I quickly hung up the phone, hoping that they would think it was the wrong number. And later that night, I went home, I crunched some of the numbers, I figured active duty pay, active duty benefits, but I can't get deployed. So I called them back and told them I'd try it out. I ended up recruiting for 7 years. And before you get too far with what you're thinking right now, I was the cool recruiter that told the truth and was very upfront about how the military really was. Now, at the end of those 7 years, it was time for me to PCS again, or move to another part of the country. And I thought to myself, after South Florida, where would I possibly go and be happy about the weather? So I got out again. Luckily, this time I was here in Broward County, and I was much better prepared. I had been aggressively networking. I started working on my transition about 8 months before my contract ended, and this time the whole process was much smoother. I knew what resources existed for me. I was connected to multiple veteran organizations. I had mentors, and I knew how to express the value that I brought to any organization. Since then, I've been very involved in the veteran community here in South Florida. I sit on a number of boards, I'm constantly mentoring, and I regularly speak about the challenges that veterans face here in our community, again, about the stigmas and narratives that are out there. Almost everyone out there in our community that doesn't personally know a veteran believes that a veteran is one of two extremes, which are both very hard to live up to. They believe that veterans are either heroes on some sort of pedestal and could never do wrong, or they believe that veterans are a liability and that could just explode at any given moment. Understand that these two extreme beliefs are not their fault. It's what they've been told. Unfortunately, most media about any topic focuses on what gets people the most excited, and usually that's negativity. If I ask anyone in this room how many veterans commit suicide every day, I bet that the vast majority would say 22. Now, while that number has never been an accurate number, it's actually significantly lower than that and getting better every day. Everybody knows that the stat exists. But if I ask the room how many businesses are owned by veterans in America, no one would even remotely guess that it's over 2.5 million businesses. That's about 10% of all the businesses in the country. And we do not make up 10% of the population. No one would know that we are now in our 15th consecutive month where veteran unemployment is actually lower than the rest of the population in the country. Also, no one talks about the fact that veterans have a higher college graduation rate than the average non-veteran peer. No one talks about any of these things, and neither do we. So that's where I need all of your help. As you all go on and do amazing things in the community, we need to celebrate each other's successes. When your battle buddy gets an awesome job, you need to tell everybody. Let the community know that veterans are kicking ass in that community. I know that none of us like to brag, but we need to show the positive and let that counteract all the negative that's out there. Let's make sure that those employers know that they really messed up when they didn't hire that veteran, and now he's making another company very successful. I regularly say that every person that you ever deal with is either an asset or they're a liability. Veterans are real assets to any organization. We alone can change the stigmas that are out there. Congratulations to all of you on finishing this step in your progress. Ensure that you are being an asset out there and that you are celebrating the other veteran assets in your area. Thank you.